Hello and welcome to Viewpoints. My name is Kathleen Kiernan. I'm an adjunct professor at the Center for Homeland Defense and Security. And today I had the opportunity to field a fantastic panel discussing issues related to the adversarial use of technology. Dave, you represent the Center for Naval Analysis. And my question for you this afternoon is ISIS a real threat?
Yes, I think they are. The reason for that is they have expressed interest in attacking the United States, our allies, and our interest abroad, as well as the homeland. And they have the ability to do so because they're a unique, adaptive, and innovative group. What I mean by that is they've been able to adapt to U.S. and coalition countermeasures in the region, and they've been able to innovate on their own volition. And I'll give you two examples to show you what I mean. On the adaptive front, in August 2014, the United States started providing airstrikes in Iraq to take out ISIS targets. And so they started tunneling underground. They barracked their men there, they launched surprise attacks from tunnels they dug, and they transported equipment. In that way, they adapted to the US dominance of the air by going into an area where we were weak and could not be. In terms of innovation, I'd say their largest innovation to date has been their use of barbarity in media. They've been able to become really creative in showing really gory videos spreading across social media to a variety of audiences. These videos go viral and spread to communicate to their potential recruits, to their potential enemies, as well as domestic audiences in the West, to include the United States and Europe, to deter those audiences from, those governments from attacking them.
David, did I understand you correctly that there are different videos for different audiences? And if that is the case, can you give us an example?
Absolutely. So in the ISIS homeland, if you will, in Iraq and Syria, they control internet access. So they've shut it off other than at internet cafes where they could have their operatives making sure that they're promoting content abroad. And so for promoting content abroad, a lot of it is barbarity to scare off potential adversaries, as well as promoting the idea of ISIS as an ideal state. And so showing ISIS cleaning the streets, carrying out regular government-type activities. Locally, the media tends to be it tends to be less media and more in person. They force people to come watch public executions and force children to come be educated in their system, which involves very little education, if any, for girls, and for boys, heavy military and religious training.
Thank you. Michael, let's talk to you about how a group like ISIS, and there's varying opinions on their strengths and their weaknesses, but how do they learn to do propaganda?
So the Western culture has inadvertently shown or taught the methods for compelling entertainment and imagery, especially when you're talking about a hero complex or basic human response mechanisms for survival or for fight or flight mechanism. We do this very well in the movie industry, and with the advancements of technologies, the affordability of high quality cameras, and the accessibility of distributing media through social and internet, they're able to leverage some of the Western advancements very cost effectively to send their messaging and do their recruiting.
Sounds to me like the cost to entry, the cost to play is really pretty minimal. And if I listened well, we're teaching a organization to fight the West with our own entertainment value that we've developed for our own populace. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, there's a couple of components. One is art imitating life, imitating art. So some of the sensationalism we put into our movies and video games tends to also complement the message that they're leveraging from the Western culture of some of these methodologies of gaining attention. We're actually a bit attracted to the barbarity a bit, which is why the videos can be compelling.
Mike, with the advancement of technology and entertainment, can we leverage the output in some way to have a different outcome with a young populace, young, impressionable populace?
Yeah, there are two components to that. One is absolutely, I think that younger generations are more in tune with the technology and communication and interactivity, so they're leveraging devices. You're seeing the evolution of virtual reality and augmented reality. We could use that for empathy, for training, for experiential understanding. And the flip side to that, the counterpart, is that our adversaries could also use that for training, for communication, for covert means that we didn't intend for it to be used for.
Al, I have a question for you. You've spent your entire adult life in the music industry and been very successful at it. Talk to us a little bit about the impact that music makes generationally. And is there a way to use music as a counter messaging format?
Music is an extraordinarily powerful element of the human condition. It's been proven many times over that music activates more centers of the brain than any other activity. Anthropologists feel that music began at a tribal level in ancient times, even before language was spoken. Mm-hmm. It reaches people on a very primal level. So if you have the right music delivered by the right artist in the right fashion, it can literally change lives. I can't tell you how many times over the course of my career in the music industry, receiving letters from young people saying how listening to a certain song has changed their life forever, or watching a certain video has changed their life forever. And I think that ties in very directly into the efforts that we have to make to counter the messaging of our enemies. We, in my opinion, are not doing a good enough job at that. We are not tapping into the incredibly deep pool of creativity that is available in this country to effectively counter message. Because I think that activity really belongs outside the bureaucratic institutional structure of governments at whatever level, federal, local, regional. And these institutions really should reach out into the community to tap into that expertise, to tap into young people to create these messages, and we need to do them in quantity and in quality and on a consistent basis to start to neutralize the messages that these young people are being exposed to. We have more experts in the creation of video and in the use of social media than any other place on the planet. We are not tapping into that rich pool of talent and capability properly enough, and I think that's a challenge that we must overcome if we're going to be successful in this arena. There's an enormous number of young people who have still trying to figure out how to empower themselves to have a productive life. Mm-hmm. And rather than they being exposed only to a message of negativity, the ability to hear messages that point in a different direction could be very helpful in helping them make a choice that at the end of the day would be better for all concerned.
Al, the very nature of organizations and bureaucracies, it's that they're very risk adverse. So to think that the government could attract the creativity that you think we need is really a fool's errand. So how would you do it? Would you go out to the schools? Would you go out to the private sector? How do you get that young at-risk populace to believe in that they can make a difference, that they can pay it forward, that they can do something individually that will make a difference?
I really think there's an opportunity for government institutions at a local level, at a community level, to reach into the community, to community leaders, to gather together the appropriate young people who are enthusiastic about doing this kind of effort, young people who have skills, the technical skills to create videos and apply music and do the appropriate editing and writing, and members of the community that can bring the proper message, who want to say something that is counter to the message that is being transmitted with great quantity by our adversary. There's an enormous amount of frustration in those communities. We need to provide them with an outlet to express that frustration, and I think without the expense of very much funding, community leaders, even in the smallest of communities, will be able to get pilot projects done in a fashion that might prove very rewarding. And if you do enough of these, across the country, you get to a critical mass level where the amount of exposure that young people would have to a different message, a variety of messages, spoken to them and delivered to them by their counterparts, by other young people, I think the effect could be quite profound.
Thank you. It's a perfect segue for a question, follow-up question for Mike. Actually, two. You shared an example with the class about some volunteer work you did with young burn victims and the effectiveness of one young child speaking to another about that experience. And then the follow-up question to that is, do you ever consider speaking with young people when you build games? How do you get the content that's so attractive to them that they're going to buy the game?
In regards to making a product like a video game for a certain demographic, we absolutely do user research where we do testbed prototypes or reach out to a user base or fan base to figure out what's compelling, what they're interested in, how they play. We have entire analytics departments that look at the metrics of online gaming, which types of choices they make in game, what type of player they are, and we incorporate that into the design. It's a sort of it motivates a better product because we're actually leveraging the psychology of the player.
David, coming back to you about, you gave us some examples of techniques, tactics, and procedures that ISIS uses, and you mentioned tunneling. Did they learn any lessons from drug cartels? Where did they learn about tunneling? I mean, tunneling's been around since the days of the Romans.
Certainly. Tunneling's not new. As many of their adaptations are not new. They take the best of what's existing out there and they adapt it to their purposes. In the case of tunneling has been widely used in the region. Famously in Gaza, Hamas uses tunnels both to supply itself from the south from Egypt, as well as to bring weapons and fighters into Israel. Hezbollah in southern Lebanon also uses tunneling extensively. And so ISIS has had many examples, and there's certainly fighters from these regions that have had experience with tunneling that are bringing it to Iraq and Syria.
So you're on a panel surrounded by very creative, innovative colleagues. Would you say ISIS is either creative or innovative or merely resourceful?
They're certainly resourceful. I would say they're innovative with a caveat. Typically, when we think of the word innovative, we think of it in the buzzword Silicon Valley way. Truly disruptive innovation that changes the way the world works, something like the internet, right, or the introduction of the automobile. Non-state armed groups like ISIS typically don't innovate at that level. They don't have the resources, and they also don't need to. Their goals are more limited, and they can achieve those goals with low levels of innovation, which I call incremental innovation. An example of where ISIS has innovated in this incremental way would be barbarity that I mentioned before. Certainly barbarity is not new. The Mongols famously piled severed heads in pyramids. Other groups in the region, including ISIS's predecessor group, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, have used barbarity. ISIS used it in two different ways. One is creativity. They don't stick with the same type of barbarity. It's not always severed heads. They burn people alive, they've drowned people, they've shot people with RPGs while we were stuck in a car. And so there's always something new for the user to come back for. And two is their use of social media. They bring it right into our homes. Only about 2 to 3% of ISIS's social media output, their media, is barbaric. However, it's the barbaric videos that go viral because of human nature. People want to see it.
So what I keep hearing is there is a primal need, and we're striking in that primal core of human behavior. Al, what do you want these first responder leaders across the Homeland Security and Homeland Defense enterprise to walk away with?
I was hoping that they would feel that there's a necessity for them to reach into their communities to motivate and activate what I'm sure is a pent-up frustration for the constant flow of messaging that's coming from our enemies that is not being responded to properly. I know that I myself am extremely frustrated whenever I read an article or hear a news account of one government official or another saying how difficult it is to mount an effective challenge to the clever use of videos and social media by our enemy, when in reality we can do an exponentially superior job of it. We just have to get started doing it the correct way.
Thank you. Mike, what's your best advice for the training academy of the future? What kind of technology should we be exposing our first responder recruit academies to?
I think that the immersive technologies, real-time graphics, sort of experiential content can create empathy or education from a perspective, a different perspective. We tend to reinforce our own values in our counter messaging, and I would like to see some more empathy in the understanding of how these things are created and executed. Sort of going back to film and media, we're very effective at the hero complex. But on an average person level, there's a sort of an identity there that's a very common element to human nature, to identify with the good guy versus the bad guy. And I think that on a just an every person level, there's a component there that we can foster. We've sort of lost the narrative, the American narrative of what do we stand for and why do we do what we think is good and true. It's getting caught up in the rest of the politics and the sensationalism, and I think down to the core root, especially with first responders, those guys, as a nature of their job responsibility, they are sort of a hero, but the hero in the sense not from like a superhero from a movie, that there is no resolution or no direct gratitude for that. The gratitude is that you're doing the right thing, and I think that fostering that sort of mentality is a good approach.
It's about respect and bringing respect back for those that protect.
Absolutely.
So,
respect for yourself, even.
Indeed. David, last question. Is it worth the risk to bring new technology into the first responder community or any community knowing that an adversary can equally exploit it?
Absolutely. We need to give our first responders the best tools out there. The fact of the matter is that the adversaries will get this technology and they'll exploit it. Whether it's they've done it with the internet in terms of recruiting, teaching people how to build bombs, how to employ different military tactics, and they'll continue to occupy that cutting edge of technology as it comes to them. So there's no reason for us to handicap ourselves to disadvantage.
Very good. Thank you very much for joining us at the Center for Homeland Defense and Security and for bringing new opinions or different opinions. My challenge to you was, can you widen the cognitive aperture of our leaders? And I think you did a fine job of that, each and every one.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's very enlightening to learn more about ISIS and what their agenda is, and how that applies to, even down to the community level of how we can affect change.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity once again to have a chance to speak to first responders who are truly on the front line of defending our way of life, and the ability and the opportunity to give them perhaps another point of view as to how to go about doing their job in the most effective way possible. And just to speak to David's point on innovation, the foundation of this country is its ability to innovate. It has been a hallmark of this country since the beginning of its founding. And we should never stop innovating, knowing that our enemies will always attempt to use our innovations for their own purposes. But if we continue to innovate at the pace that we have done in the past, we will always be ahead of them.
So our adaptation and our development just has to pick up.
Yeah, we just have to keep pedal to the metal on that one.
Very good. Well, thank you.